You think you're too good for me now? Is that it? The words tore through the elegant living room like a machete through silk. 30 pairs of eyes turned toward the sound. Yetunde felt her body freeze as Damilola's hand connected with her shoulder, shoving her backward. She stumbled, her champagne glass shattering against the marble floor. Then came the kick. Not a push, not a shove, a deliberate, calculated kick to her shin that sent her crashing to her knees in front of everyone. His friends, her friends, family members who had traveled from Ibadan for their engagement party. The room went silent, except for one sound. Laughter. His friends were laughing. Damilola stood over her, his expensive shoes inches from her face, and said the words that would echo in her mind for weeks. Stay down there. That's where you belong. Welcome to Stories by Tino. Thank you so much for joining us today. Your support means everything to this channel, and we're grateful to have you here. Before we dive into this powerful story, please take a moment to drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Are you in the US, Jamaica, Nigeria, the UK? We love hearing from our global family. Now, let's get into a story about humiliation, silence, and the kind of revenge that doesn't announce itself with screams, but with strategy. The engagement party had been perfect until it wasn't. Yetunde had spent 3 weeks planning every detail. The venue, a sprawling estate in Lekki with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Lagos Lagoon, had cost more than her yearly salary as a primary school teacher. But Damilola had insisted. "My friends expect excellence," he'd said, as if she were merely a prop in his performance of success. She'd chosen a deep burgundy asoebi for the women in her family, paid for the DJ who played the latest Afrobeats hits, and personally approved the menu. Jollof rice that made guests close their eyes in appreciation, peppered goat meat that fell off the bone, and small chops arranged like arts on silver trays. Everything was perfect, until Damilola's friends arrived. They came in loud, 5 men in their early 30s, all wearing designers she recognized from his Instagram posts. They worked in tech, oil, and real estate, and they treated the world like it owed them applause just for existing. Damilola transformed the moment they walked in. His voice got louder, his laugh became performance, and his eyes stopped seeing her as a person and started seeing her as something to prove a point with. "Yetunde, bring more drinks for my brothers," he'd called out, not asked, in front of the entire room. She'd smiled and obliged, ignoring the way her Aunt Bisi's face tightened with disapproval. "Yetunde, tell them how you chased me for 2 years before I agreed to date you," he'd announced, rewriting their entire history while his friends howled with laughter. She laughed too, weakly, because what else could she do? Everyone was watching. But the real breaking point came at 9:47 p.m. She'd been standing near the gifts table, thanking guests, when one of Damilola's friends, Femi, the one who always smelled like expensive cologne and entitlement, made a comment about her dress. "Dami, your wife looks like she's going to a funeral, not an engagement party. All that burgundy, very village elder energy." The group erupted in laughter. Yetunde felt her heat crawl up her neck, but she kept her smile in place. She'd learned to do that. Swallow insults like bitter pills and keep moving. But Damilola didn't defend her. Instead, he joined in. "I told her to wear something brighter, but you know how stubborn she can be, always thinking she knows better than everyone else." Something cracked inside her chest. She turned to look at him, really look at him, and for the first time, she saw the truth she'd been avoiding for months. He didn't love her, he tolerated her, and in front of his friends, he didn't even do that. "Damilola," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "Can we talk for a moment, privately?" His eyes hardened. "We're celebrating. Whatever you want to say can wait. It's important. Everything is always important with you," he snapped, his voice rising. The conversations around them began to fade. People were noticing. You know what? Damilola's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. I'm tired of pretending. That's when he shoved her. It wasn't hard enough to cause real injury, but it was public enough to cause maximum humiliation. She stumbled backward, her champagne glass slipping from her hand and exploding against the marble floor in a shower of glass and golden liquid. The room went completely silent. Yetunde tried to steady herself, tried to regain her balance, both physically and emotionally, but before she could, Damilola's foot connected with her shin, a deliberate, vicious kick that sent her crashing to her knees in front of everyone. His friends, her friends, family members who had traveled from Ibadan for their engagement party. The room went silent, except for one sound: laughter. His friends were laughing. Damilola stood over her, his expensive shoes inches from her face, and said the words that would echo in her mind for weeks. Stay down there. That's where you belong. The laughter grew louder. Her mother gasped from somewhere across the room. She heard her younger sister Funke shout, "Yetunde!" in alarm, but she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what had just happened. Damilola turned back to his friends, already moving on, already forgetting she was there on the floor. As I was saying, about that deal in Port Hakat. Someone, she thought it might be her Aunt Bisi, tried to help her up, but Yetunde pulled away. She rose on her own, slowly, feeling every eye in the room on her. Her shin throbbed, her dress was wet with champagne, her engagement ring caught the light as she gripped her trembling hands. She didn't cry, she didn't scream, she didn't make a scene. She simply walked toward the exit with her head up and her spine straight, leaving behind the laughter, the whispers, and the man who thought he'd broken her spirit, along with her dignity. But as she stepped into the warm Lagos night, something shifted inside her chest, not breaking, hardening, because Damilola made one critical mistake. He humiliated her in public. He kicked her in front of witnesses. He proved to everyone in that room, including herself, exactly who he was. And in doing so, he'd set her free. Free to plan. Free to prepare. Free to make sure that the consequences when they came with the precision of a surgeon's blade and the finality of a judge's javelin. The wedding was still 6 weeks away. 6 weeks to make sure that the man who kicked her to the ground would remember that moment for the rest of his life, not because she shouted or begged or made a scene, but because she stayed silent and planned something he would never see coming. If the person you loved humiliated you like this in public, would you walk away or plan your revenge? Drop your answer in the comments below.
Yetunde hadn't always been the woman who could walk away from humiliation with her head high and revenge in her heart. 3 years earlier, she'd been softer, more trusting, the kind of woman who believed that love could fix anything and that good people attracted good things. She'd met Damilola at a friend's birthday party in Victoria Island. She'd noticed him immediately, not because he was the loudest person in the room, though he was, but because he'd looked at her like she was the only person worth noticing. In a room full of Lagos big girls and designer everything, he'd walk straight to her, the primary school teacher, in a simple Ankara dress she'd sewn herself. "You're different," he'd said, handing her a glass of Chapman. "Everyone here is trying so hard to be seen, but you're just comfortable being yourself." She'd blushed, flattered by the attention. Damilola was handsome in that sharp, calculated way. Clean fade, expensive watch, the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. He worked in real estate development, buying land in emerging areas of Lagos and flipping it for triple the price. "I'm Damilola," he'd said, extending his hand. "Yetunde," she'd replied, shaking it. "Well, Yetunde, I think I'm going to marry you someday." She'd laughed it off as a line, but he'd been persistent. For the first 6 months, he'd been everything she dreamed of. He showed up at her school with lunch during her break. He sent her money without her asking, just because. He introduced her to his mother, an elegant woman who lived in a sprawling house in Ikoyi and seemed genuinely pleased that her son had chosen a decent girl instead of the Instagram models he usually dated. Yetunde's friends were jealous. Her family was relieved. Everyone told her she'd won the Lagos lottery, a handsome, wealthy man who wanted to settle down. But there were signs, small ones at first, like the time he joked in front of his friends that she was basic compared to his exes, but that he appreciated her simple lifestyle. Everyone had laughed. She'd laughed too, swallowing the sting. Or the time he'd criticized her outfit before a wedding. You can't wear that. People will think I'm dating someone who doesn't know how to dress. And then handed her money to buy something appropriate. She felt grateful in the moment, not realizing he was training her to doubt her own judgment. Or the time he promised to attend her school's end-of-year ceremony where she was receiving an award for Teacher of the Year, then canceled last minute because something came up with work. She'd stood on that stage alone, accepting her plaque while scanning the audience for his face and finding empty space instead. Each incident was small enough to excuse. He was busy, he was stressed, he was just joking, he didn't mean it that way. But over time, the small things accumulated into something heavier. By the second year, Yetunde had learned to shrink herself. She stopped wearing outfits he hadn't approved. She stopped sharing opinions that contradicted his. She stopped expecting him to show up for things that mattered to her because disappointment hurt less than hope. Her sister Funke noticed first. "You're different now," Funke had said one Sunday afternoon as they sat in her mother's compound in Ibadan, peeling plantains for Dodo. "You used to argue with everyone about everything. Now you just agree." "I'm just more mature," Yetunde had replied, not meeting her sister's eyes. "Mature or scared? Funke, don't start." "I'm serious, Yetunde. That man has changed you. You don't laugh the same way anymore. You don't even sit the same way. You're always checking your phone like you're expecting him to be angry about something." Yetunde wanted to defend Damilola, to explain that Funke didn't understand how relationships worked, how compromise was necessary, how you had to give up some things to gain others. But deep down, she knew her sister was right. The engagement happened suddenly. They'd been dating for 2.5 years when Damilola announced, not asked, announced that they would get married in 3 months. "I've already spoken to your father," he'd said over dinner at a restaurant in Lekki. "He's agreed. My mother is planning the introduction ceremony. I need you to start looking at wedding venues." Yetunde sat there, fork halfway to her mouth, processing the fact that the most important decision of her life had been made without her input. "Don't you think we should discuss this first?" she asked carefully. His face hardened. "Discuss what? We've been together long enough. My mother is asking questions. Your age is not getting any younger. What exactly is there to discuss?" Her age. She was 29, hardly ancient, but in Lagos society, unmarried at 30 was treated like a tragedy waiting to happen. "I just thought maybe we'd talk about timing or..." "Yetunde." His voice dropped to that tone she'd learned to recognize as a warning. "Are you saying you don't want to marry me?" "No, I'm not saying that. I'm just..." "Because if you don't want this, just say so. There are plenty of women who would be grateful for this opportunity." The threat was clear. Say the wrong thing, and he'll walk away. And then what? She'd be the woman who'd wasted 3 years on a man who left her. She'd face her mother's disappointment, her friends' pity, society's judgment. So she smiled and said, "Of course I want to marry you." And just like that, the decision was made. The engagement ceremony had been beautiful. Damilola's family came to Ibadan with gifts and formality. Her father, a retired civil servant who still believed in tradition, had been proud. Her mother cried tears of joy. Everyone said they made a perfect couple. But Yetunde had felt like she was watching her life happen to someone else. As the wedding planning intensified, so did Damilola's control. He dictated the guest list, cutting out friends he deemed not impressive enough. He chose the venue without consulting her, then complained about the cost she had nothing to do with selecting. He criticized her wedding dress choice. "Too simple. People will think I'm marrying someone with no taste." and then handed her money to buy something appropriate. She'd felt grateful in the moment, not realizing he was training her to doubt her own judgment. Or the time he promised to attend her school's end-of-year ceremony where she was receiving an award for Teacher of the Year, then canceled last minute because something came up with work. She'd stood on that stage alone, accepting her plaque while scanning the audience for his face and finding empty space instead. Each incident was small enough to excuse. He was busy, he was stressed, he was just joking, he didn't mean it that way. But over time, the small things accumulated into something heavier. By the second year, Yetunde had learned to shrink herself. She stopped wearing outfits he hadn't approved. She stopped sharing opinions that contradicted his. She stopped expecting him to show up for things that mattered to her because disappointment hurt less than hope. Her sister Funke noticed first. "You're different now," Funke had said one Sunday afternoon as they sat in her mother's compound in Ibadan, peeling plantains for Dodo. "You used to argue with everyone about everything. Now you just agree." "I'm just more mature," Yetunde had replied, not meeting her sister's eyes. "Mature or scared?" "Funke, don't start." "I'm serious, Yetunde. That man has changed you. You don't laugh the same way anymore. You don't even sit the same way. You're always checking your phone like you're expecting him to be angry about something." Yetunde wanted to defend Damalola, to explain that Funke didn't understand how relationships worked, how compromise was necessary, how you had to give up some things to gain others. But deep down, she knew her sister was right. The engagement happened suddenly. They'd been dating for 2.5 years when Damalola announced, not asked, announced that they would get married in 3 months. "I've already spoken to your father," he'd said over dinner at a restaurant in Lekki. "He's agreed. My mother is planning the introduction ceremony. I need you to start looking at wedding venues." Yetunde sat there, fork halfway to her mouth, processing the fact that the most important decision of her life had been made without her input. "Don't you think we should discuss this first?" she asked carefully. His face hardened. "Discuss what? We've been together long enough. My mother is asking questions. Your age is not getting any younger. What exactly is there to discuss?" Her age. She was 29, hardly ancient, but in Lagos society, unmarried at 30 was treated like a tragedy waiting to happen. "I just thought maybe we'd talk about timing or..." "Yetunde." His voice dropped to that tone she'd learned to recognize as a warning. "Are you saying you don't want to marry me?" "No, I'm not saying that. I'm just..." "Because if you don't want this, just say so. There are plenty of women who would be grateful for this opportunity." The threat was clear. Say the wrong thing, and he'll walk away. And then what? She'd be the woman who'd wasted 3 years on a man who left her. She'd face her mother's disappointment, her friends' pity, society's judgment. So she smiled and said, "Of course I want to marry you." And just like that, the decision was made. The engagement ceremony had been beautiful. Damilola's family came to Ibadan with gifts and formality. Her father, a retired civil servant who still believed in tradition, had been proud. Her mother cried tears of joy. Everyone said they made a perfect couple. But Yetunde had felt like she was watching her life happen to someone else. As the wedding planning intensified, so did Damilola's control. He dictated the guest lists, cutting out friends he deemed not impressive enough. He chose the venue without consulting her, then complained about the cost she had nothing to do with selecting. He criticized her wedding dress choice. "Too simple. People will think I'm marrying someone with no taste," and then handed her money to buy something appropriate. She'd felt grateful in the moment, not realizing he was training her to doubt her own judgment. Or the time he promised to attend her school's end-of-year ceremony where she was receiving an award for Teacher of the Year, then canceled last minute because something came up with work. She'd stood on that stage alone, accepting her plaque while scanning the audience for his face. The silence in Yetunde's one-bedroom apartment in Surulere was deafening. She'd driven herself home that night, ignoring the 17 missed calls from Damilola, the 12 text messages from her mother, and the voice note from Funke that started with, "Sister, what is happening?" She sat on her bed, still wearing the champagne-stained dress, staring at the wall where she'd hung a framed photo from their first anniversary.
In it, they were laughing at a beach in Lekki. She looked so young in that picture, so trusting. She stood up, took the frame off the wall, and placed it face down in her closet. Then she did something that surprised even herself. She opened her laptop and started researching. Not wedding venues or honeymoon destinations, something far more practical. Nigerian marriage law, property rights, prenuptial agreements, financial disclosure requirements. By 3 a.m., she'd filled an entire notebook with information that made her blood run cold. By 6 a.m., she'd made several discoveries that changed everything. The next morning, Demilola showed up at her apartment with roses and a face that suggested he expected gratitude. "Baby, open the door," he called through the wood, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "I know you're upset, but we need to talk about last night." Yetunde opened the door, but didn't smile. She simply stared at him with a face so neutral it could have been carved from stone. "Can I come in?" he asked, already stepping forward. She moved aside, watching him enter her small space like he owned it. He placed the roses on her dining table, red roses, expensive ones, the kind that cost 5,000 naira per stem at the fancy florist in Victoria Island. "Look," he started, his tone reasonable and measured. "I know things got out of hand last night. My friends were drinking, the atmosphere was charged, and I reacted poorly." Reacted poorly, as if kicking your fiancé in front of 60 people was equivalent to forgetting to say please. "I accept your apology," Yetunde said quietly. His face lit up with relief. "Really? Just like that?" "Yes, just like that." He moved toward her, trying to pull her into an embrace, but she stepped back. Not dramatically, not angrily, just back. "I need some time, Demilola, to process what happened." His face tightened. "Process what? I apologized. I brought you flowers. What more do you want?" "I want time." "We don't have time. The wedding is in 6 weeks. There are vendors to finalize, guest confirmations to send out. My mother is already asking questions." "Then tell her I need a few days," Yetunde interrupted, her voice still calm. "Tell her I'm not feeling well. Tell her whatever you need to tell her. But I need space." Something flickered in his eyes. Confusion, maybe. Even a trace of fear. This wasn't the Yetunde he knew. The Yetunde he knew apologized when he did wrong. The Yetunde he knew made excuses for his behavior before he even had to. This Yetunde was different. "Fine," he said, picking up his car keys with more force than necessary. "Take your space, but don't take too long. I'm not a patient man, and there are consequences to playing games with me." After he left, Yetunde locked her door and returned to her laptop. Playing games. If only he knew. Over the next 3 days, Yetunde became a ghost at her own wedding planning. She responded to messages with short, polite replies. She confirmed vendors without enthusiasm. She attended the final dress fitting with a smile that never reached her eyes. Everyone noticed the change. Her mother called. "Yetunde, what is wrong? You sound different." "I'm fine, Mama. Just tired from all the planning." Her sister Funke was more direct. "He kicked you. Everyone saw it. You know you don't have to marry him, right?" "I know." "Then why?" "Funke, please. I need you to trust me." And Funke, who knew her sister better than anyone, heard something in Yetunde's voice that made her stop pushing. "Okay, but whatever you're planning, I'm here." Demilola, meanwhile, interpreted her silence as submission. He started calling her my quiet queen in front of his friends, joking about how he'd tamed her. His friends laughed and congratulated him on handling the situation. But while Demilola celebrated his perceived victory, Yetunde was making discoveries that would reshape everything. The first discovery came from an unlikely source, Demilola's younger brother, Segun. Segun had always been kind to her, the only member of Demilola's family who seemed to see her as a person rather than an acquisition. He'd pulled her aside at a family meeting 3 days after the incident. "Sister Yetunde," he said quietly, using the honorific that would soon be appropriate. "I need to tell you something, but but you have to promise not to say I told you. I promise. My brother, he's not who you think he is. Yetunde's heart started racing, but she kept her face calm. What do you mean? Segun looked around nervously, then pulled out his phone. He has another woman in Port Harcourt. She has a child, a 2-year-old boy. My brother has been sending her money for the past 3 years. The world tilted slightly, but Yetunde remained steady. Why are you telling me this? Because you seem like a good person, and because, he hesitated, because the woman in Port Harcourt thinks she's engaged to him too. He gave her a ring 6 months ago. Yetunde took this information and filed it away like evidence in a case she was building. Thank you, Segun. Do you have proof? He showed her photos, screenshots of transfers, messages that made her stomach turn. Can you send these to me? Are you going to confront him? No, she said, and meant it. I'm going to do something better. The second discovery came from her own investigation. Yetunde had started asking subtle questions about Damilola's business. How did land acquisition work? Where did he get funding for his projects? How did he manage to flip properties so quickly? The answers led her to a lawyer friend from university, Ngozi, who worked in corporate law. Ngozi, if someone wanted to hide assets before marriage, how would they do it? Ngozi raised an eyebrow. Why are you asking? Just curious. Yetunde, we've been friends for 12 years. I know when you're just curious and when you're planning something. What's going on? So Yetunde told her everything. The kick, the humiliation, the woman in Port Harcourt, the wedding that was now 4 weeks away. Ngozi listened without interrupting, her lawyer face firmly in place. When Yetunde finished, Ngozi pulled out a legal pad. First, you need to know that Nigerian law doesn't automatically split assets in divorce, unless there's a prenup or a significant contribution can be proven. But there are other ways to protect yourself. I'm not looking to protect myself, Yetunde said quietly. I'm looking to make sure he understands there are consequences. Ngozi studied her for a long moment, then smiled slowly. Tell me what you need. What Yetunde needed was information, and Ngozi helped her get it. Over the next 2 weeks, they discovered that Damilola had taken out loans using properties he didn't fully own. They found evidence of tax evasion that could trigger serious legal consequences. They uncovered that Damilola's mother's house, the one in Ikoyi that seemed so permanent, was mortgaged to the hilt to fund his lifestyle. And the wedding, their expensive, elaborate wedding, was being funded partly by a loan from an uncle, a loan that Damilola had told everyone was a gift. Yetunde learned all of this while playing the role of obedient fiancé. She attended cake tastings, she confirmed the honeymoon reservations in Zanzibar, she smiled for photos at the bridal shower his mother insisted on throwing. And through it all, Damilola never suspected a thing. You've been so good lately, he told her 1 week before the wedding, pulling her close after a vendor meeting. I knew you'd come around, you just needed to understand who's in charge. Yetunde leaned into the embrace and said nothing. But in her bag was a folder, a thick folder, containing everything she'd learned, everything she'd documented, everything she would need. The wedding was in 7 days. 7 days until she walked down an aisle toward a man who thought he'd won. 7 days until the wedding night that would change both their lives forever. Because Yetunde had learned something important in the weeks since that humiliating kick. Revenge wasn't about screaming or making scenes or dramatic confrontations. Revenge was about timing, and her timing was going to be perfect.
If you discovered the one secret that could destroy someone who hurt you, would you use it? Let us know in the comments. The wedding day arrived with Lagos sunshine so bright it felt like a blessing from God himself. Yetunde woke up at 5 a.m. in a hotel suite at the Echo Hotel, surrounded by bridesmaids who'd been squealing with excitement since they arrived the night before. Her mother sat in the corner wiping tears of joy. Her sister, Funte, moved through the room with forced cheerfulness, helping the makeup artist set up while shooting Yetunde concerned glances every few minutes. "Sister, are you sure?" Funke whispered when they had a moment alone in the bathroom. Yetunde looked at her reflection, face bare, eyes clear, shoulders squared. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." "But you're going through with it? The whole wedding?" "Every single moment." Funke searched her face, then nodded slowly. "Okay, then I'm with you, whatever you need." The makeup artist transformed her into someone who looked like a bride should look, radiant, glowing, innocent. The dress, the one Damilola had insisted on, all lace and crystals and excessive elegance, fit perfectly. The photographer captured every moment, Yetunde stepping into her shoes, Yetunde's mother fastening her necklace, Yetunde staring out the window at the Lagos skyline with an expression that could be read as pre-wedding contemplation but was actually cold calculation. By 11 a.m., she was ready. By noon, the church was packed. The Cathedral Church of Christ in Victoria Island was the kind of venue that announced wealth before the bride even appeared. White roses covered every surface. The choir wore matching gold robes. The guests, over 300 of them, wore asoebi in emerald green and gold that had cost each person 30,000 naira. Damilola's friends sat on the groom's side, dressed in sharp suits and expensive watches, already recording on their phones for Instagram stories. Some of them were the same men who'd laughed when he kicked her. They smiled at her now as if that night had never happened. Damilola himself stood at the altar looking like everything Lagos aspired to be: successful, handsome, confident. His suit was custom-made, his shoes were Italian. His smile was the smile of a man who'd gotten exactly what he wanted. When the bridal march began, Yetunde walked down that aisle on her father's arm with her head high and her face serene. Every eye was on her, every phone was recording, every mouth was whispering about how beautiful she looked, how perfect they were together, how blessed this union would be. Yetunde saw all of it and felt nothing but the weight of the folder hidden in her bridal suite upstairs. Her father handed her over to Damilola with tears in his eyes. "Take care of my daughter," he said. "I will, sir," Damilola promised, his voice thick with emotion that might have been real or might have been performance. With him, it was always hard to tell. The pastor began the ceremony with a sermon about submission and respect, about how marriage was a sacred covenant, about how husband and wife must honor each other in all things. Yetunde listened and didn't smile. Damilola listened and did. The vows came next, traditional vows about sickness and health, richer and poorer, better and worse. "I, Damilola, take you, Yetunde, to be my lawfully wedded wife." His voice was strong and sure. He looked at her like she was a prize he'd won after a difficult competition. "I, Yetunde, take you, Damilola, to be my lawfully wedded husband." Her voice was calm and clear. She looked at him like she could see straight through to his bones. Something flickered in his eyes, a moment of uncertainty perhaps, or maybe just a shadow from the stained glass windows. But then it was gone, replaced by his trademark confidence. "You may now kiss the bride." Damilola pulled her close and kissed her with the enthusiasm of a man who believed he'd successfully completed a transaction. The church erupted in applause. The photographer moved in close. Someone released doves that fluttered toward the cathedral ceiling. And Yetunde kissed him back while mentally reviewing every piece of evidence in that folder upstairs. The reception was held at the same Lekki estate where he kicked her 5 weeks earlier. If anyone else found this choice tasteless, they didn't say so. Yetunde had suggested a different venue, but Damilola insisted. "We already paid the deposit, and besides, everyone's forgotten about that little incident. No need to be dramatic." Little incident. As if public humiliation could be dismissed with 2 careless words. But Yetunde had agreed with a smile. And now, here they were, dancing under fairy lights while a live band played the latest Afrobeats hit, and guests ate jollof rice and peppered chicken and small chops arranged on gold-rimmed plates. Damilola was in his element. He moved through the crowd like a king greeting his subjects, stopping to laugh with friends, to accept congratulations, to pose for photos that would flood Instagram by morning. His friends were everywhere, loud and drunk and celebratory. Femi, the one who'd insulted her dress at the engagement party, gave a speech about how Damilola had finally found a woman who knew her place. Everyone laughed. Yetunde smiled. Her mother gave a speech about how proud she was of her son for choosing a proper wife instead of those Lagos girls with no home training. Everyone clapped. Yetunde bowed respectfully. Her own family sat at their assigned tables looking vaguely uncomfortable. Her Aunt Bisi caught her eye once and held it for a long moment, a question in her gaze. Yetunde gave the smallest nod. "I'm okay. Trust me." The evening progressed exactly as weddings should. Toasts and dancing and cake cutting and bouquet throwing. Yetunde performed every ritual with perfect grace. She laughed at the right moments, she cried at the touching speeches, she danced with Damilola while guests circled them and sprayed money that would be collected later by eager children. To everyone watching, she was the perfect bride. Radiant, happy, content. Only Funke, standing at the edge of the dance floor with her phone in hand, saw the truth. Yetunde wasn't happy. She was waiting. By 10 p.m., the reception was winding down. Older guests had left. The younger crowd had migrated to the open bar. Damilola's friends had formed a circle near the pool, smoking cigars and telling stories that got louder and more exaggerated with each drink. The wedding planner approached Yetunde with a knowing smile. "Mrs. Yetunde, your honeymoon suite is ready. Should I let your husband know?" Mrs. Yetunde. The name felt like a costume she'd put on but didn't plan to keep. "Yes, please. Tell him I'll meet him there in 20 minutes. I just need to change out of this dress." She went upstairs to the bridal suite they'd reserved for the night, a luxury room overlooking the lagoon, decorated with roses and candles and champagne on ice. The folder was exactly where she left it, hidden inside her going-away bag. She changed out of her wedding dress slowly, carefully, hanging it up like it was something precious rather than something she'd never wear again. She put on a simple but elegant dress, the burgundy one from the engagement party actually, cleaned and pressed. A deliberate choice, a reminder. Then she picked up the folder, took a deep breath, and prepared herself for the conversation that would end her marriage before it truly began. Downstairs, Damilola was saying goodbye to the last of his friends, already loosening his tie, already anticipating the wedding night with the confidence of a man who believed he controlled every aspect of his life. He had no idea that upstairs, his bride was preparing to teach him the most important lesson he would ever learn. You can kick a woman to the ground, you can humiliate her in public, you can treat her like she's less than human, but you cannot control what she does with the information she gathers while she's down there on her knees, watching, learning, planning. The wedding was over. The real ceremony was about to begin. Damilola entered the honeymoon suite at 10:47 p.m. with the swagger of a man who just won the greatest prize of his life. He'd removed his jacket and tie, unbuttoned the top 3 buttons of his shirt, and was carrying a bottle of champagne he'd grabbed from the reception. His phone was in his hand. He'd been texting his friends, probably sharing jokes about finally taming his wife. "Baby, this room is incredible," he said, barely glancing at Yetunde as he headed straight for the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Lagos Lagoon. "My mother really outdid herself with the arrangements. Wait until we post photos from Zanzibar next week. My followers are going to lose their minds." Yetunde sat in an armchair near the bed, the folder resting on her lap, her hands folded on top of it. She'd positioned herself deliberately, not on the bed, not standing nervously, but seated like she was conducting a business meeting. She said nothing. After a moment, Damilola noticed the silence. He turned, still smiling, champagne bottle in hand. "What's wrong? Wedding day exhaustion? Don't worry, I'll make this quick and—" His words died when he saw her face. Not the face of a blushing bride, not the face of a woman grateful to be married, the face of someone who'd been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. "Sit down, Damilola," she said, quietly. His smile faltered. Yetunde, what's going on? It's our wedding night. Can we not do whatever this is? Sit down. Something in her tone made him obey. He set the champagne bottle on the dresser and sat on the edge of the bed, confusion giving way to irritation. Okay, I'm sitting. Now, what's this about? Yetunde opened the folder. The first document she placed on the coffee table between them was a printed screenshot of messages between Damilola and a woman named Hadiza, messages that were dated from last week, 3 days before their wedding. His face went pale. Her name is Hadiza, Yetunde said, her voice conversational, almost pleasant. She lives in Port Harcourt. You've been seeing her for 3 years. She has a 2-year-old son named Ibrahim, your son. Yetunde, I can explain. I'm not finished. She placed another document on the table. This is a photo of the engagement ring you gave her 6 months ago, 2 months before you gave me mine. She thinks she's engaged to you. She's been planning a wedding. Damilola's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. Would you like to explain now, or should I continue? Where did you get... Your brother Segun told me 3 weeks ago. He felt sorry for me. She pulled out more papers. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is what I found when I started looking into your business. She spread the documents across the table like cards in a game she was winning. Bank statements, loan documents, tax records. You told everyone you owned 5 properties in Lagos. That's a lie. You own 1, and it's mortgaged for 3 times what it's worth. The other 4 belong to your uncle, who's been letting you pretend they're yours to maintain your image. Damilola stood up, his face flushing red. You had no right to go through my personal... Sit down, Yetunde said, and her voice was so cold it could have frozen the lagoon outside. I'm not done. He sat. You took out a loan for 2 million naira last month. You told people it was for business expansion, but according to these bank records, you spent 1.3 million on this wedding, our wedding, the wedding you insisted on having at this venue, with these vendors, with this level of extravagance, all to maintain an image you can't afford. She pulled out another document. You haven't paid taxes in 2 years. The Lagos State Internal Revenue Service has been sending notices to your office address. You've been ignoring them. Do you know what happens when tax evasion reaches this level? Criminal prosecution, possible jail time. Damilola's hands were shaking now. What do you want? I want you to understand something. Yetunde leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. 5 weeks ago, you kicked me in front of 60 people. You told me to stay on the ground because that's where I belong. Do you remember? I apologized for that. No, you brought roses and expected gratitude. That's not an apology. That's a transaction. I spent 5 weeks gathering this information. 5 weeks playing the obedient fiancé while documenting every lie you told, every law you've broken, every person you've deceived. Yetunde, please. I went through with this wedding for one reason, so that everyone who saw you kick me would see what happens next. She walked to the window, looking out at the lights of Lagos. Tomorrow morning, copies of these documents will be delivered to 3 places: your mother, your uncle, and the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service. Damilola shot to his feet. You can't do that. That's blackmail. That's consequences. She turned to face him. You treated me like I was nothing, like I was so broken and desperate that I'd accept any treatment just to be married. You were wrong. I'll deny everything. I'll tell people you're lying, that you're a bitter woman who... With what credibility? Yetunde's laugh was sharp and humorless. I have Segun willing to testify. I have Hadiza's phone number. I called her this morning, by the way. Lovely woman, very shocked to learn about our wedding. She's willing to provide DNA evidence for your son. The color drained from his face completely. I also have 12 witnesses who saw you kick me at our engagement party. Several of them recorded it on their phones. Your friend Femi was kind enough to post it on his Instagram story. He deleted it quickly, but I screenshotted everything. She paused.
Did you know screenshots are admissible in Nigerian divorce proceedings? Divorce. We just got married. Correction. We just completed a wedding ceremony, but we haven't consummated this marriage, and according to Nigerian law, that gives me grounds for annulment. I've already consulted with a lawyer. The papers are drawn up. I just need to file them. Damilola collapsed back onto the bed, his head in his hands. Why are you doing this? Because you need to understand something. Yetunde leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. Women are not property. We're not props in your performance of success, and we're certainly not punching bags for your ego. Yetunde picked up her small overnight bag. I'm leaving now. This room is paid for through tomorrow, so feel free to stay. The champagne is excellent. I'm told you have refined taste. Where are you going? That's no longer your concern. Yetunde, wait. He looked up at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw something that might have been genuine emotion in his eyes. Fear. What do you want from me? Money? I can get money. Just tell me what you want and we can fix this. She walked to the door, then paused with her hand on the handle. I want you to remember this moment. Every time you think about kicking someone when they're down, every time you think about humiliating someone because you have the power to do so, every time you treat another human being like they're beneath you, I want you to remember the woman who knelt on that marble floor, gathered her evidence in silence, and taught you the most expensive lesson of your life. Please, goodbye, Damilola. She opened the door and walked out, closing it gently behind her. In the hallway, she allowed herself one deep breath. Then she pulled out her phone and sent a single text message to Funke. It's done. Come get me. Behind her, she heard something crash against the wall, probably the champagne bottle. Then silence. Yetunde walked toward the elevator with her head high and her spine straight, just as she'd walked away from that engagement party 5 weeks ago. But this time, she wasn't walking away in humiliation. She was walking away in victory, and she'd never felt more powerful in her entire life. Should revenge be loud and violent or quiet and permanent? Tell us what you think in the comments. The morning after the wedding that wasn't really a wedding arrived with a kind of Legos humidity that made everything feel heavier. The air, the silence, the weight of choices made, and consequences coming due. Yetunde woke up in her old bedroom at her parents' house in Ibadan. She'd driven there with Funke at 1 a.m., both of them silent for most of the 2-hour journey, processing everything that had happened. Her sister had asked only one question as they passed through the toll gate leaving Lagos. Are you okay? Yetunde had answered honestly, I will be. Now, lying in the same bed she'd slept in as a teenager, wearing one of her old university t-shirts, she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Light. As if she'd been carrying a heavy load and had finally set it down. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. 43 missed calls, 67 text messages, 12 voicemails. She ignored all of them except one message from Ngozi, her lawyer friend. Documents delivered at 9 a.m. as requested. All 3 locations confirmed receipt. Call me when you're ready. Yetunde smiled and put the phone face down on the nightstand. Let the consequences begin. In Lagos, Damilola's world was collapsing with the speed and thoroughness of a controlled demolition. The first envelope arrived at his mother's house in Ikoyi at 9:03 a.m. A courier in a professional uniform handed it to the housemaid who brought it to Mrs. Olabisi Damilola as she sat in her prayer room, still thanking God for yesterday's successful wedding. She opened it expecting a thank you card or perhaps a wedding gift receipt. Instead, she found 30 pages of documentation that made her blood pressure spike so dramatically she had to sit down and call for her blood pressure medication. Bank statements showing debts she knew nothing about. Photos of a woman in Port Harcourt holding a child that had her son's exact face. Screenshots of messages that made it clear her son had been lying to everyone about everything for years. And a simple note on the last page, typed in clear professional font. Your son kicked his bride in front of 60 witnesses 5 weeks ago.
This is what I discovered while planning my revenge. You raised a man who believes women exist to serve his image. Perhaps it's time he learns differently. Yetunde. Mrs. Olabisi called her son 17 times. He didn't answer. The second envelope arrived at Damilola's uncle's office in Victoria Island at 9:15 a.m. Uncle Tunde was the family patriarch, the man whose real estate empire had provided the foundation for Damilola's pretend success. He was sitting in a board meeting when his secretary interrupted with an apologetic expression and an envelope marked urgent and confidential. He excused himself, opened it in his private office, and spent the next 20 minutes reading with increasing fury. His nephew, his sister's son, whom he'd been protecting and promoting for years, had been using properties that didn't belong to him to secure loans, had been claiming ownership of buildings Uncle Tunde merely let him manage, had been lying to potential investors, to banks, to the entire Lagos business community. And worse, he'd put Uncle Tunde's name on several documents without permission, making him potentially liable for Damilola's debts and fraudulent activities. Uncle Tunde was a patient man. He'd built his fortune through careful planning and strategic relationships, but there was one thing he couldn't tolerate: being made a fool of. He called his lawyer immediately. Then he called Damilola. The phone rang 8 times before going to voicemail. "Damilola," Uncle Tunde said, his voice dangerously calm, "you have until 5 p.m. today to be in my office with explanations. If you're not here by then, I'm calling the police myself." The third envelope arrived at the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service at 9:28 a.m. This one was expected. The tax officers had been trying to track down Damilola for 18 months, sending notices that went unanswered, making calls that went unreturned. They'd been building a case, but evidence was always difficult to gather when the subject was skilled at hiding assets. This envelope contained everything they needed: complete financial records, property holdings, income sources that had never been declared. It was so comprehensive, so meticulously organized, that the senior investigator handling the case actually smiled when he finished reading. "Someone did our job for us," he told his colleague. "All of this is admissible. We can move forward immediately." By 11 a.m., a formal investigation had been opened. By noon, a warrant had been issued for his financial leopards. By 2 p.m., the Lagos Tax Authority had frozen his primary bank account pending investigation. Damilola, meanwhile, was still in the honeymoon suite at the Lekki estate, surrounded by the ruins of his carefully constructed life. He'd spent the night alternating between rage and panic. He'd thrown the champagne bottle against the wall, then spent an hour trying to clean up the glass because he couldn't bear the evidence of his loss of control. He'd called Hadisa in Port Harcourt, but she'd blocked his number. Apparently, Yetunde's phone call yesterday had been very thorough. He tried to access his bank accounts to see how much cash he could move quickly, only to discover his main account was frozen. He'd attempted to call his mother 19 times. She answered on the 20th. "Mama, I can explain. Come home now." Her voice was colder than he'd ever heard her. "Come home and bring your explanations with you." The drive from Lekki to Ikoyi never felt longer. The confrontation in his mother's living room was biblical in its fury. Mrs. Olabisi sat in her favorite chair, the envelope's contents spread on the coffee table like evidence at a trial. Uncle Tunde stood by the window, his arms crossed, his face carved from stone. Segun, Damilola's younger brother, sat in the corner looking everywhere except at his brother. "Explain," Mrs. Olabisi said. Not a request, a command. Damilola tried. He tried to spin it, to minimize it, to make it sound like misunderstandings and unfortunate timing and circumstances beyond his control. "The woman in Port Harcourt, that was before Yetunde. It's complicated. I was going to handle it. You have a 2-year-old son, a grandchild I knew nothing about. The loans are investments, Mama. Every successful businessman takes calculated risks." "Calculated risks?" Uncle Tunde's laugh was bitter. "You used my properties as collateral without permission. Do you understand what that means? If you default, which you are clearly about to, they come after me. You've made me liable for your lies. I was going to tell you. When? After you destroyed my reputation along with yours? Damilola turned to his brother. Segun, you told her. You betrayed me. Segun finally looked up, and his eyes were harder than he'd ever seen them. I told her the truth. That's not betrayal. That's what you should have done 3 years ago. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Mrs. Olabisi stood up, her hands shaking with rage or grief or both. I understand that I raised a son who lies, who cheats, who kicks his fiancée in public and expects no consequences, who treats women like property and people like tools for his ambition. Mama, please. Where is Yetunde? The question hung in the air like a blade. She left, Damilola admitted quietly. Of course she did. Any woman with sense would. Mrs. Olabisi walked to the window, staring out at the Lagos skyline. Do you know what hurts me most? Not the debts, not even the lies. It's that you kicked that girl in front of everyone, and I said nothing. I told myself it was just wedding stress, that you didn't mean it, that marriage would settle you. She turned back to face him, tears streaming down her face. But she saw what I refused to see. She saw exactly who you are, and instead of accepting it, instead of shrinking herself to fit your cruelty, she gathered evidence, and she planned, and she made sure everyone would know the truth. Mrs. Olabisi wiped her eyes. That girl is stronger than all of us, and you lost her because you couldn't see past your own ego. I can fix this. How? Uncle Tunde demanded. The tax authority has frozen your accounts. Your debts are real. Your lies are documented. Your son in Port Hockett is a biological fact. How exactly do you plan to fix any of this? Damilola had no answer. By evening, the news had spread through Lagos society like smoke through an open window. The wedding that everyone had attended yesterday was already over. The bride had left. The groom was facing tax evasion charges. There was a secret child in Port Hockett. The financial situation was worse than anyone had imagined. The same friends who'd laughed when Damilola kicked Yetunde now distanced themselves with the speed of people abandoning a sinking ship. Instagram posts from the wedding were quietly deleted. Tagged photos were untagged. Nobody wanted to be associated with the scandal. Femi, who'd made the joke about Yetunde's dress at the engagement party, posted a cryptic message. You never really know people, praying for all involved. The comment section filled with people who suddenly remembered they'd always felt something was off about Damilola. The vendors who'd been paid with borrowed money started calling, asking questions about outstanding balances. The hotel where they'd planned to honeymoon called to confirm the canceled reservations. Apparently, Yetunde had called them that morning and gotten a full refund by explaining the situation. Even the woman in Port Hockett, Hadisa, posted a message on her Facebook.
6 months later, Yetunde sat in a cafe in Ikeja, sipping ginger tea and reviewing lesson plans for her primary 4 class. The cafe was one of those modern Lagos spots with good Wi-Fi, comfortable chairs, and enough distance from her old life that she could exist without looking over her shoulder. She'd cut her hair, not dramatically, just a trim that felt symbolic. New season, new version of herself. She wore a simple yellow dress she'd bought with her own money, taught from a curriculum she'd helped design, and lived in a small but comfortable flat in Surulere that belonged entirely to her. The annulment had been finalized 3 months ago. Damilola hadn't contested it. He'd been too busy dealing with the tax evasion case, the lawsuits from creditors, and the complete destruction of his social standing. The unconsummated marriage, combined with evidence of fraud and the existence of his secret child, had made the legal process surprisingly straightforward. Her lawyer Ngozi had handled everything with professional efficiency. You're free, she'd said when the final papers came through. Legally, financially, completely free. Free. The word had felt foreign at first, like vocabulary from a language she'd forgotten how to speak. But slowly, day by day,
she'd learned what it meant. It meant waking up without checking her phone for angry messages. It meant wearing whatever she wanted without worrying about someone's approval. It meant making plans without having to report to anyone. It meant existing as a complete person rather than as someone's accessory. Her phone buzzed. A message from Funke. "Sister, have you seen?" Attached was a screenshot from Instagram. Damilola's account, which had once boasted 80,000 followers, now sat at 12,000. The latest post was from 2 weeks ago, a generic motivational quote about rising from challenges that had received mostly laughing emojis in the comments. Yetunde looked at it for a moment, then put her phone away without responding. She didn't need to monitor his downfall anymore. It was complete, and more importantly, it was no longer her concern. The door to the cafe opened, and her Aunt BC walked in, elegant as always in a wrapper and blouse, her head tie perfectly arranged. They'd started having monthly lunch dates, Yetunde's way of rebuilding relationships she'd neglected during the years with Damilola. "My dear," BC said, settling into the chair across from her, "you look well, really well." "I feel well, Auntie." "Good, because I have news." BC ordered her own tea before continuing. "I ran into Mrs. Olabisi at the market last week." Yetunde's expression didn't change, but her attention sharpened. "How is she?" "Tired, ashamed. She asked about you." BC studied her niece carefully. "She wanted me to tell you that Damilola is in counseling, court-ordered as part of his plea deal with the tax authority." "That's good." "Is it?" BC leaned forward. "Do you care whether he gets better?" Yetunde considered the question honestly. "I care that he doesn't hurt anyone else the way he hurt me. If counseling helps with that, then yes, it's good. But do I care about him personally? No." That feeling died the moment his foot connected my leg. BC nodded slowly. "You've become hard." "No, Auntie, I've become clear. There's a difference." "Tell me the difference." Yetunde set down her teacup and met her aunt's eyes. "Being hard means building walls so high that nothing can get in. Not love, not trust, not connection. Being clear means understanding what you will and won't accept and having the courage to enforce those boundaries. I'm not hard. I'm just no longer confused about what I deserve." "And what do you deserve?" "Respect, honesty, partnership. Someone who sees my strength and doesn't feel threatened by it. Someone who lifts me up rather than kicking me down." She smiled. "And if I never find that, I'm okay, because I've learned I can lift myself up just fine." BC reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Your mother worries you'll never trust anyone again." "Mama worries about everything. It's her spiritual gift," Yetunde laughed. "But you can tell her I'm not closed to love. I'm just more selective about where I invest it, and I'll never again shrink myself to fit someone else's insecurity." After lunch, Yetunde walked through the streets of Ikeja towards the bus stop. Lagos moved around her with its usual chaos and energy. Okadas weaving through traffic, market women calling out prices, the smell of suya from roadside grills mixing with exhaust fumes and possibility. She loved this city. Even after everything, she loved it. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello?" Yetunde. The voice was male, hesitant, familiar in the worst way. Her entire body went still. "Damilola? You have 2 minutes." "I'm sorry," his voice cracked. "I know that's inadequate. I know sorry doesn't fix what I did to you. But I need you to know that I've spent 6 months in therapy understanding how deeply I hurt you, how wrong I was, how much damage I caused." Yetunde kept walking, her pace steady, her face neutral. "You kicked me," he continued, "in front of everyone. You humiliated me, and I did it because I was insecure and scared and so desperate to maintain an image that I turned you into a prop instead of seeing you as a person. That's unforgivable." "You're right, it is. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not calling to ask for that. I'm calling because my therapist says I need to take responsibility without expecting anything in return. So I'm taking responsibility. What I did to you was abuse. It was wrong, and you had every right to do what you did." Yetunde stopped walking, stood there on the Lagos sidewalk with people flowing around her like water around a stone. "Why are you really calling, Damilola?" Silence. Then, "Because I see it now, what you did. Wasn't revenge, it was justice. You didn't destroy me, you revealed me, and everyone who turned away did so because they saw the truth of who I'd been all along. And what do you want me to do with this information? Nothing. I want nothing from you. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what you tried to teach me." He paused. "That actions have consequences. That women are not property. That you can't kick someone to the ground and expect them to stay there." Yetunde felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, she wasn't ready for that, and might never be, but a release, a letting go of the anger she hadn't realized she was still carrying. "Okay," she said simply. "Okay? I've heard your apology, I acknowledge it. That's all I can give you right now." "That's more than I deserve." His voice was thick with emotion. "I hope you're happy, Yetunde. I really do. You deserve happiness. You deserved it then, and you deserve it now." She hung up without saying goodbye. Then she stood there for a moment, breathing in Lagos air, polluted and humid and full of life, and felt something she hadn't felt in 6 months. Peace. Not because he'd apologized, but because she realized his apology changed nothing about her healing. She'd already done the work, already rebuilt herself, already learned the lessons she needed to learn. His apology was for him, not for her, and she didn't need it to move forward. That evening, Yetunde sat in her small flat with her laptop open, working on something new. She'd been writing, not for publication, not for anyone but herself, about her experience, about what it felt like to be humiliated publicly, about how she'd gathered evidence in silence, about the wedding night that ended a marriage before it began. Funke had read an early draft and said, "Sister, other women need to hear this. Women who are going through what you went through. Women who think they're trapped." "I'm not ready to share it," Yetunde had said. But maybe she was getting ready. Maybe her story, told in her own words, on her own terms, could help someone else find the courage to stand up, speak up, gather evidence, and refuse to stay on the ground where someone tried to keep them. Her phone buzzed. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find her Aunt Bisi standing there with a pot of jollof rice and a concerned expression. "Mama, you didn't have to come all the way from Ibadan. A mother doesn't need a reason to check on her daughter." She bustled inside, immediately heading for the kitchen. "Have you eaten today? You look thin." "I ate lunch with Aunt Bisi." "That was hours ago." Her mother started unpacking containers. "Rice, chicken, plantain. Sit, eat. Tell me how you're really doing." Yetunde sat at her small dining table and accepted a plate of food that smelled of home and comfort and unconditional love. "I'm doing well, Mama. Really." Her mother studied her face for a long moment. "You are well, aren't you? When I first came back to Ibadan that night, I was so worried. My daughter, married for less than 12 hours, already walking away. I thought you were broken." "I was broken, just not in the way you thought. No, you were breaking free. I see that now. I'm proud of you, Yetunde, proud of your courage, proud of how you handled yourself with dignity, even when you had every right to burn everything down." "I learned from you, Mama. You always taught us that true strength is quiet, that real power doesn't announce itself with noise." "I did teach you that, but you taught me something too." Her mother reached across the table and took her hand. "You taught me that quiet strength doesn't mean accepting mistreatment, that dignity doesn't require silence in the face of injustice. You showed me that a